Finally, Lady Gaga is freed from the chains of the Percy Jackson fandom. Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my YouTube videos. Today we are going to be reviewing episode 6 of Percy Jackson, We Take a Zebra to Vegas. I think this episode was a lot of people's most anticipated episode. This is the episode that involves the Lotus casino scene. So needless to say, we've all been very excited for this. Actually, I think the fandom's been a little split on it. There's been a real big increase in movie fans lately. I don't know how any of you who frequent my YouTube videos feel about the movies. I thought that we were all under the general consensus that the Percy Jackson movies suck. But ever since the show came out, there's been a lot of people on TikTok specifically, like, praising the movie, and it's been weird. It's been really, really weird, honestly. And a lot of people were like, if they don't use Poker Face in the TV show's a flop, blah, 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 blah. It's just been a weird place to be. That's all I'm gonna say. But let's go ahead and get into breaking down this episode and reviewing it. So the episode starts out with a Kronos dream, but it's like not really Percy's dream. It's like it's Kronos' dream. We learn later on in the episode that it's kind of like Kronos' dream that Percy's eavesdropping on. I don't know what form Kronos was taking. It looked to me like Kronos was taking the form of like Percy's old principal from Yancey Academy, but I can't quite exactly remember, but that's just what it looked like to me. I don't think that was the actual actor who's going to be playing Kronos, I think. I don't know. Maybe it is. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments. But so it's a Kronos dream, and Kronos is talking to the lightning thief. We don't see the lightning thief, obviously, but we all know who it is. Percy wakes up from his dream, and he's on the 18-wheeler with Annabeth and Grover, and we are introduced to Iris messaging in the Percy Jackson TV show. Very exciting stuff. Annabeth calls Percy seaweed brain once again, and they toss a drachma into the rainbow. They say their little saying, and they call camp. And who do they see but none other than Luke? It's interesting because they specify that they want to see Chiron's office, and then Luke is in Chiron's office. Suspicious. He definitely is not supposed to be in there. So then Percy and Annabeth tell Luke that they know who the lightning thief is. They've put two and two together. They know who stole it, and they say it's Clarice, of course. So Luke's like, oh, you know what? You're right. Clarice is the lightning thief. I agree. Me when I lie. So they sit and they talk for a little bit. Luke informs us of what's going on at camp. They think that they're all going to war soon, so the cabins are getting ready for war and picking sides. And then Annabeth and Percy are like arguing a little bit over what happened on what day. So they're like, no, Medusa happened on Sunday. No, it happened on Saturday. And then Luke is like, when did you guys become an old married couple? I was shocked. Insinuating being married to 12-year-olds is like just about the most embarrassing thing that could happen to them, probably. Then the trio leaves the 18-wheeler along with the animals. And of course, once they're out of the truck, Grover is far more worried about the animals than he is about the humans everywhere, which I thought was super cute. Another really cute moment between Percy and Annabeth, where Percy's like, which one do you think is the Lotus Casino Hotel? And Annabeth's like, maybe the one that is in the shape of a lotus flower. And Percy's like, you were only like 2 seconds ahead of me on that. They're writing Percebeth so well, it's crazy. So they make their way to the Lotus Casino and they walk in, and what else is playing? None other than Dua Lipa. I was vibing. I love Dua Lipa, and I love the song Levitating. I thought that that was an excellent music choice for the casino scene. It's honestly like a very modernized version of Poker Face, like if you're someone who was desperate for them to play Poker Face for some reason. So then before they enter the casino, they kind of have a little conversation about the Odyssey and Odysseus, and so they're a little bit aware of like the lotus flower and how if they're not careful, they could get stuck here and that would not be good. So it's interesting to see them go into another situation like they did with Medusa, where they're knowledgeable about what they're about to get themselves into. They're a little bit more aware of their surroundings and a little bit more aware of their situation. I quite like that compared to the book, where when they went to see Medusa or when they went to the Lotus Casino, they weren't really aware of their surroundings, just because I feel like Percy and Annabeth and Grover are supposed to be really smart people, specifically Annabeth, and when they're unaware of their surroundings, it makes them feel kind of stupid. And I know they're only 12, but like, I don't know. You're 12, but you're also a demigod, so you should really be aware of your surroundings at all times. So I do like that the show is doing that. And then, Percy finally calls Annabeth a wise girl. It was so perfect. So they go into the Lotus Casino and they're like, all right, let's split up so we can find Hermes. And I don't know when this trio is going to realize that they need to stop splitting up. Stop it. It doesn't work. Quit doing it. But they split up anyways. Grover goes off on his own, and Percy and Annabeth go off on their own. And then Annabeth starts talking to Percy about how she's already met Hermes. There was so much setup for book 5 in this episode. It was kind of insane. Like, I was shocked that they're really setting up that far in advance. And I loved it and I respect it, and it was so much fun to see. Spoilers for The Last Olympian if you haven't read it yet, if you're like newer to the book so you don't want to get spoiled too much. I'm not necessarily going to spoil like the main plot of The Last Olympian, but this is like a mild spoiler warning, I guess. So in The Last Olympian, we learn that before Grover got to Annabeth and Thalia and Luke, the three of them went to Luke's house, and we saw Luke and Hermes meet for the first time, and we saw Luke with his mom, and his mom's like fucking crazy. And it's just, it's a lot of development to Luke's character in the 5th book of Percy Jackson, and it's so fascinating that they were doing this in this episode. Like, talking about Luke meeting Hermes, talking about Annabeth meeting Hermes, talking about Luke's mother in season 1 is wild, like actually wild. And I really quite love it. I love the early setup. Then we cut to Grover. Grover sees another satyr in the casino. His name is Augustus. Grover knows him and he's like, hey, oh my god, Augustus. Augustus does not recognize him because, you know, where they are, they forget things there. And, you know, this is just another sort of side plot, I guess, for Grover where they're setting up Pan. I love the Pan setup. I love it so much. This side plot for Grover was far less interesting for me than last episode with him and Ares. So whenever it cut away from Annabeth and Percy, I was kind of like, ugh. But it was still fine. It was still perfectly fine. So then we cut back to Percy and Annabeth, and Percy wants to tell Annabeth about these dreams he's been having. He still doesn't really understand or even know that it's Kronos, which makes sense. We cut back to Grover again, and we already see him forgetting that he's there with Annabeth and Percy. He forgets who they are. He's like, what am I doing here? What was I about to say? So Grover's already losing his memory. And then we see Percy and Annabeth meet Hermes, and he's a little shit. Realistically though, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda did such a good job as Hermes. I never doubted him. If you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you know that I've been behind the casting of Lin as Hermes for a while. I've always expected that he would do great, and he did even better than I could have ever thought in this episode. Really, really good. When Annabeth says we're friends of Luke, Hermes' face, oh my god. Lin-Manuel Miranda did such a good job. Lin-Manuel Miranda understood the plot. He understood the project, and he delivered, and he got an A+. So then Hermes and Annabeth and Percy go and sit down, and Hermes is talking to Annabeth, and he's like, I remember you. You were there the day I last saw Luke. I really just could not believe my ears that they were talking about something that happened so much later in the books, even though when we learn about it in the books, it's a flashback, so it's already happened. It's just crazy to see them get to talk about it in season 1, because now, writing the show, Rick Riordan knows that that's going to happen, but at the time of writing The Lightning Thief, obviously he didn't really know that that was going to be a thing. So it's just really nice and fun to see. We get to see Hermes talk about Luke and Luke's mom. He says some very devastating stuff. He's like, no matter how much I tried to help, I just kept making things worse, which is honestly really sad. Like, it was kind of a little bit of a heartbreaking moment for Hermes. And I'm excited to see them do the flashback, hopefully, if we ever get to season 5. So then at a certain point in Hermes' little speech, he like grabs Percy's arm and like shows him a past memory. I didn't know that that was an ability that Hermes had. I don't know if I just am forgetting that from the books or if that's something they added, but either way, I think it's super cool. And then I love how he went to also go touch Annabeth, and she like grabbed her hand away. She was like, I remember, just perfectly fine. Like, she does not want to see any memories of her father or her mother. Hermes says a line that I like quite a lot where he goes, it's very hard for a god to feel powerless. I feel like that's another theme that we're going to see as the show continues on. So then Annabeth gets up from the table, Percy gets up a little bit after her, and Hermes is back to being a little bit of a shit deadbeat father because he knew that holding Percy and Annabeth at the table was going to pass so much time for them. We learned that like they've been there for like 4 days. I think it was Monday when they showed up, and now it's Thursday in the week. So they desperately scramble to find Grover. Percy's like, time moves faster than here. Like 1 minute in here is like an hour or 2 out there. And I'm like, okay, Interstellar. Okay, Interstellar. It's like that one planet where every tick in the song is like 7 hours or something. We learn that Annabeth pickpocketed Hermes, and she says, I'm multi-talented, and I love her. That's literally my daughter. I don't know what else to tell you. We learn that the reason that they were forgetting everything, even though they didn't even eat the lotus flowers, was that they're pumping the fruit into the vents. Like, one of the weird things about the movie scene of the Lotus Casino is that it's essentially you're watching kids be drugged. Like, yeah, they're 16 in the movie, but they're still kids, and we're watching them just be drugged at this casino. So it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit of a weird vibe. So Percy and Annabeth forgot about Grover. So they're like, oh no, we have to go find him. And they see Augustus, the satyr, and Percy's like, oh, I remember Grover. Grover got old. So he thinks Augustus is Grover for a second, but then he runs and he tackles him. And I'm so happy that now I know who Percy tackles in the Lotus Casino. When I did my trailer breakdowns and I saw that shot, I was like, who the fuck is Percy tackling? And it's all I've thought about since. It's all I've been able to think about. And I'm so happy that now I know who it is. It's Augustus, fellow satyr. Case closed. It's a great day. They find Grover. He's like playing some sort of VR game, and Grover just does not remember who they are. They go to find Hermes' car. Grover talks a little bit more about Pan. He's like, that game I was playing, it felt like I was close to finding Pan. It felt like I was going to be the first one to find him, which is basically just a whole bunch of foreshadowing to the fact that he is going to find Pan and he is going to be the satyr that finds him, which I thought was super cool. They get in the car. Percy's the one that has to drive because Grover's still like confused and does not know what's going on, so Percy has to drive, and oh my god, it was so painful watching him drive that car. It was really funny. His New York kind of came out a little bit though, because someone drove by them really fast and he's like, he didn't even slow down, and then he honks at him. It's like, tell me you grew up in New York without telling me you grew up in New York. Percy finally kind of makes it out of the deck, and he almost crashes into the wall because he was just smiling at Annabeth, which is just so cute. But eyes on the road. Basically, once the car got out of the deck and onto the road, it traveled them immediately to Santa Monica, which I honestly quite like. I don't really remember how they get to Santa Monica in the books, but for the show, saved a lot of time for them to just automatically travel to Santa Monica, so I really appreciated it. They get out of the car, and Grover finally remembers who they are, and Grover's like, why did I forget so much more than you guys? And Annabeth's like, well, it's easier to forget things when you're alone. I love the concept of Percy and Annabeth kind of being each other's tether to reality while they were in the Lotus Casino, because I feel like, again, this is another reference to The Last Olympian that sort of foreshadows Annabeth being Percy's tether to his mortality. These show writers do not stop cooking. It is non-stop. They're doing such a good job. So Percy's like, okay, it's time to go talk to my dad. I'm going to walk into the ocean. Obviously, he doesn't meet his dad in the ocean. He meets a nymph. The nymph is like, your dad tried to stay for as long as he could, but he had to go. He had to get his troops ready because it's Thursday and the summer solstice has passed. That's new. That's absolutely new. In the book, Percy has like at least a day until the summer solstice happens. So he's on a time crunch to get the lightning bolt. But in the show, the summer solstice has already passed. It's already passed. His deadline has passed to get the bolt back to Zeus. Zeus and Poseidon are getting ready for war. So I think that that's a very interesting choice, and I'm really curious to see like where they go with that. I feel like a part of it is 9 times out of 10 when you adapt a book to a show or a book to a movie, you always have to kind of add something for more of a dramatic flair. For example, in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the games in the book are much shorter and not really as dramatic as they are in the movie, because when you're making something a visual aid, you gotta add like some sort of dramatic flair to it to keep people interested. When you're reading a book, you can sort of imagine whatever you want in your head. That's all on you to create that up there. But when it's on a screen, you have to do something that's going to capture an audience. You have to do something that's going to keep their attention and keep them watching. So them having it so that the summer solstice has passed and that Poseidon and Zeus are getting ready for war, I think that's honestly just to add a dramatic flair, because obviously they're not gonna go to war. We get to see Percy talk underwater for the first time, which I thought was super cool, and I thought it was done really, really well. I think anytime you do anything underwater, like legit, it's gonna look a little silly. And I know it's not like CGI, like they actually put Walker in a dunk tank and like made him film until he was like all wrinkled. But for what it is and for how difficult it is to film underwater, I thought it looked great. And it did look like he was talking. And then the nymph hands Percy 4 pearls instead of 3. In the book, he only gets 3. I'm really curious to see how that's going to go. In the preview for next week's episode, you can hear Percy and Grover fighting. And Percy's like, take the pearls, they'll get you out of here. And Grover's like, what about you? what about you? So maybe Percy's gonna lose a pearl or something and Sally will stay in the underworld like she does in the book, or all four of them will get out. I don't know. Who's to say? We'll see next week. And then the last line of the episode was one of my favorites because I'm a sucker for Sally Jackson. Percy's like, why are you handing me 4 pearls? And the nymph is like, save the world and then go save your mom. End of the episode. So my overall review of the episode is I really liked it. I think they handled the casino scene really, really well, especially because a lot of people were probably expecting so much out of it because of the movie. I do feel like the episode was super short, like it went by really, really fast, but that's fine because if you go and read the book, like the Lotus casino scene is really short in and of itself. So I wouldn't expect the episode to be all that long anyways. I think I liked last week's episode better. Like I think episode 5 is still my number 1 episode of the show so far, but I can tell that the next 2 episodes of the show are going to be absolutely insane. I also know that the next 2 episodes are going to be longer episodes, not super long, like I'm talking like 45, 48 minutes, something like that. So they're not going to be short, like 30 minutes or less. I think this episode was just a continuation of everything that they've been doing really well so far. They've been doing a great job at setting up all the characters individually, specifically Grover. They've been doing a lot of work with setting up him and Pan, which I think is good. They've been setting up Percabeth really, really well. And also, yeah, I've gone to saying Percabeth because I think me saying Percabeth was upsetting to a lot of people. I think the general consensus says Percabeth, so I'm trying to train myself to say Percabeth. Whatever. Tomato, tomato, potato, potato. But yeah, I think the show is setting up Percabeth really, really well. I know a lot of people are concerned about them successfully doing a slow burn because Percabeth is a slow burn. But I don't think they're doing them too fast. I think they're setting up their friendship really well. I think they're setting up their crush on each other really well, but they don't admit their crushes to each other for such a long time, so it's not a big deal. Once again, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda did such a good job as Hermes. I'm kind of glad that this episode was not a musical episode. I know that that was something that a lot of fans were theorizing about. I'm glad that Lin was not singing. I think that if they had him sing, nobody would have taken him seriously as Hermes and people would have complained about it, but I think he did such a fantastic job as Hermes, specifically portraying the parts where they talk about Luke. The way that they handled Hermes when it came to Luke, not only does that develop Hermes as a character, but that also helps develop Luke as a character, because when we get to the end of this season, we're going to have a little bit of background information on him and his family, him and his mom, and him and his dad. So I really love the development for both of those characters. And yeah, basically the best way I can describe how I felt about this week's episode was I had fun. I had a lot of fun. Not my favorite episode. I don't want to call it a filler episode because that sounds mean and derogatory, but I don't mean it that way. It just, this episode had a lot of setup for the future, which I, as a book reader, love. I feel like if you're not a book reader, though, this episode probably fell a little flat to you because you're like, why do I care so much about Luke and his dad? Because you don't get it yet, but you will, I promise. So I think book readers can appreciate this episode for what it's doing for the future of the show, but I think non-book readers probably will have a different vibe for this episode. But it's okay because next week we see him go to the underworld. I think next week we see him fight Ares. And then in the finale, it's going to be him finally meeting his dad. And that's going to be so exciting because I'm so excited to see Poseidon and Zeus. Oh, I cannot wait. And then after that, the show is going to be over. And I'm not going to know what to do with myself. I'm going to have to come up with other kinds of YouTube videos to film. Oh my god. Sorry if I'm rambling. As I'm filming this, it's literally 2:30 in the morning, so I'm a little sleepy. But yeah, please let me know what you thought of this episode. I'm really curious to see what the consensus is. I'm curious if you guys loved it for the setup that it brought us, or if you guys were like iffy on it because it kind of felt like an empty episode at the same time. Let me know what your favorite part of the episode was. I love getting to read y'all's comments. It's my favorite part of posting these YouTube videos is seeing what you guys think of the show. Make sure you follow me on all my other social medias. I talk about Percy Jackson a lot over there. I've been doing a lot of videos on TikTok about Percy Jackson, and they're a little bit too long to be posting on YouTube Shorts. They're like 2 minutes long, but go watch them because those are super fun, and I'm having a lot of fun making those. Make sure you watch my reaction to this week's episode. It was a good one. We had lots of good little reactions up in there, so make sure you check that out. If you're new here and you like to hear someone just talk about Percy Jackson, first of all, make sure you subscribe, because I post a lot of Percy Jackson content, but you can also go watch all of my other episode breakdowns because so far I have broken down every episode of the show. But yeah, I think that about does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Bye. Bye.